Kids, I'm back, and this is my Paranormal Life Volume 4. Now, Volume 4 is going to start at the end of 2002, and I'm going to start in a much more intense um, paranormal awakening. So we're not going to move as fast chronologically through time because there's much more to say in the years between 2002 and today. So I want to kind of paint a picture that I've been watching the other videos to make sure that I'm covering everything. And I wanted to make sure that I wanted to throw in something. First of all, I've had a best friend now for, I think it's 26, 7 years now. Um, and he's been my best friend. And he has abilities also. They're not quite the same as my abilities, but he had much more abilities when I met him, um, far more than I did. And he doesn't he doesn't he doesn't practice them as much as I have because of the work I'd done. So we kind of went from this to this. Um, and I've become more active than he has. And I'm also a lot denser than he is, so I don't have any fear, and I just jump into things. And that's going to be important in some later stories. But I wanted to give you that history that I had a friend all this time since my mid 20s that was very open and talking to me about paranormal things, and he taught me a lot of stuff that I didn't even know. Um, I don't do a lot of reading, particularly about paranormal stuff or anything. The only thing I really read is about commercial aviation because I'm an av geek, and I have been since I was 2. So long before I became involved in the paranormal, I have always been an av geek. I'm wearing an av geek t-shirt today. I have lots of them. It is my true first love. Paranormal is not my true first love. Paranormal is something that happened to me. So that's important. Now, also, in my last video, I ended kind of in December of 2002, but I have to premise this with I had a change of life and relationship, and I talked about my relationship group. And just prior to that, my relationship ended. And in November, I got my first pets in many, many, many years. And I used to be terrified. I used to have cats. Um, and I hadn't had cats in practically a decade at least. And I'd always been terrified of dogs from a small age. So I got my first dog, who I still have. His name's Spooky. And I got this beautiful, very expensive, purebred Abyssinian cat named Missy, who ended up dying on about her second birthday, which broke my heart for about 4 years. Um, so much so that when I moved from South Florida to Central Florida, I dug her up and I brought her here and I reburied her. I get much more attached to animals than I do to people, and I always have, and I pretty much always will. But Spoochie's still alive. He's hanging in there by a thread. He's very old now, but I adore him. And then I have had more pets since then. I now have, at the current moment, I have 3 dogs, 2 cats, 2 turtles, and a squirrel. Um, but I've had guinea pigs and hamsters and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, and I also have 2 cranes that I have been, they're sharing with me now. They're 8th generation that they've been breeding, which is an honor since I've been up here. It's wonderful. I love Central Florida for a lot of reasons. So all that non-paranormal aside, just kind of giving you an update. I took on my massage school in a new, very toxic relationship that I had started as a kind of a bounce from the a real true love. So it was this really awful relationship. Um, but I bought a house, my first physical house. I had bought a townhouse, which I was living in when I started all this and got a dog and cat. Um, but I went and bought a physical single house. And it was old and it was in the hood and it was in disrepair. And I remodeled that house till it was the biggest white elephant on the block. So besides now juggling school, I was also juggling remodeling a house and a new relationship and pets, all at once. So my life was just this complete turmoil of activity that I had never done before. So it was all this new uncharted territory. Um, and I was managing it pretty well. Now, when I first started going to school, and my first day at massage school, as a matter of fact, was quite special. It was eye-opening in a lot of ways, and this is going to resonate with some of you, and you're going to say, well, what does this have to do with paranormal? But hopefully we'll get to it. Um, we were herded in, and I went full time. So in Florida at that time, if you went full time, it was literally 6 days a week, and you could get through it in about 7 months, 7.5 months. So it was really intense. It was a long day every day, plus Saturdays, and then all day on Sunday you had to study, and you had to do other hands-on things with your guinea pigs that you can find, um, so that you were ready for Monday morning. So it was basically a 7-day-a-week job. Um, and you learned health and physiology, kinesiology, and biology, and muscles and tendons and everything. It was serious stuff. Now, I had only had one massage um, before I signed up for school. And it happened to be, which I didn't even realize, at the same school I was going to go to. And I remember it was 2 hours. It was a gift. I had never had a massage before. And I remember it was just like this. I just felt like this. I was floating when I left. I mean, I was barely conscious. It was quite incredible. Now, I never knew, because again, I'm not the smartest pencil in the box. I never knew that sex was involved in massage. I always thought it was, something therapeutic. I didn't realize the whole happy ending thing and all that kind of stuff. This whole subculture to massage didn't even dawn on me. So again, like I said, I'm rather dense. I walk into things without knowing. Now, I said my school was the most progressive of probably any school in the nation, and it was rated one of the number one in the nation. And there was 27, I think, of us, or 28 of us when we started this class, and they gave you like a gemstone, because they had other classes in different phases. They also had the part-time classes that were in the evening. So in order to keep the confusion away, you stayed with your class. And my class was the Ruby class, and 2003. And it was this very extremely diverse group of people, males and females, younger, older, black, white, everything, Jewish, Protestant, non-religious, and one pregnant lady. One. She didn't last the whole class, so she dropped out. But I'll get to her. So we were all herded in the first morning, and we were sat in this room with no seats, so we had to sit on the carpeting. It was like brown carpeting. It was this very drab-looking room, and we just all kind of sat around and stared at each other, didn't know what to say. Some of us were more gregarious than others, by saying hi, introducing ourselves, I was not that guy. Now, coming into massage school, which is also very important, um, I had worked at the airlines at the airport, and I was usually in a supervisory role or a manager's role or something like that for a very long time. And I had garnered a reputation of being a complete, militant, scary asshole. I mean, a real asshole. If you had to come see me, it was your last stop. And when I used to interview people for jobs, I literally had adult people that had heard of me literally piss themselves in their seats just in my presence. That's just how intense I took my job. And I was frightening to people. And some, like the security people at the airport used to call me the Russian because I was just like, you know, the Russian, even though I was supposedly, I have no idea what my background was, but they decided I was the Russian. Um, so when I announced to all my friends and coworkers and everybody I knew that I was leaving the airline industry and going into massage, I got out loud laughter, literally. And the comments basically were on the terms of, who the hell would ever want to have a massage with you? Who could possibly relax around you? You're such an asshole. Blah blah blah. And I was a true asshole. I mean, I had been bred to be a complete asshole, and I took everything very seriously, and I had a very good memory, so I could memorize stacks and stacks and stacks of these large books full of rules and regulations on how to think, feel, breathe, everything. And if you didn't follow those regulations, I was there to cut your ass right at the knees. So most people just thought, like, you know, where is he getting this? He's like, he couldn't imagine me being a massage therapist. So I didn't get an actual nice send off saying good luck. It was more like, you've lost your mind and maybe you need to be medicated or whatever. So that's how I felt when I went in, because I just kept hearing all my coworkers talking to me. So I sat in this room, and then suddenly this door opened, and two people walked through the door, and they were instructors. And one was a very elderly lady, and another one was a guy probably in his mid-30s. He looked healthy, and she was kind of wrinkly, and everything was sagging from her, breasts to her vagina, and everything was kind of just drooping down, and obviously time had taken its toll, as far in gravity too. And this guy was much taller, built, and had an extremely large penis. Um, so everybody just kind of like went, and I just sat there like, what's going on? And they walked in very matter of fact, closed the door, introduced themselves by name, and said, stop, and we want you to look. And some people turned away because they just couldn't handle it. They turned away. They said, look at us. And then they started talking about the female form. Look at the breasts, look at the vagina, look at this, look at that. She even kind of pulled her vagina apart. This is my clitoris. Blah, 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 blah. Turned around, this is my ass. She spread her cheeks, showed her lips, the whole 9 yards. So we all just kind of like, okay. And then same with him. This is me, this is my muscles, this is my large penis, this is my testicles, this is my ass, blah, 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 blah. So we're like, all right. And they said, now, if this makes you uncomfortable, and if you haven't seen either of these things or both of these things in your life, and you don't think you can deal with seeing them for the rest of your life, then you don't belong here. So this is your moment to get up and leave, because you're going to get naked in front of your classmates every single day. And then once you leave, you're going to have naked clients in front of you of both genders, all kinds of sexual orientations, and extreme fetishes that you've never even heard of, coming your way. So if you don't think this is for you, take a moment, think about it, and make a decision, because once we start, there's gonna, if you leave now, we'll give you a refund. But if you don't, no refund. So I think 4 or 5, almost 6 people got up immediately and left, just mortified. And the rest of us kind of just sat there like we were stunned. And it was this expansive moment in my life. Again, okay, so now we're going to deal with bodies. And then they told us, okay, so those of you that have decided to stay, let's see how committed you are. Stand up and take off all your clothes and just stand here in front of your classmates and stand here in front of us, and just realize that you might be uncomfortable with your body, and I can tell that several of you are insecure with your body, and I was one of them. But you're going to have to get used to that, and you're going to have to get over it. So we took off our clothes and we just stood there. And they made us stand there for probably 25 minutes and not saying much, just standing there naked, all of us in the room. And it was mind expanding, because suddenly all of those years of me having body issues were starting to feel stupid. And I was getting more comfortable in my skin. And if you're comfortable in your body, then you also get more comfortable in your mind, and it helps you get more comfortable with your paranormal stuff. So if you have paranormal abilities and you have insecurities, especially with your own body, it's not going to serve you well. So I learned this the hard way. I didn't study this. It happened to me. And that was the beginning of this journey. Now, they went on to say, we're going to do, there's 2 different segments of this school. There is the touch stuff, and there is the academic stuff. And they're 2 totally separate things. And we expect 2 totally separate things from you. Your academics, you must learn down cold. Absolutely. You're going to learn every muscle, every joint, everything in your body, how it works, why it works, and we're also going to learn health and safety and being clean and all that kind of stuff. That's one thing. And there's no getting around it. You have to memorize it, because if you don't memorize it, you'll never pass your state test. And then there's touch. Now, touch is more tingly and out there and kind of etheric, and they said it's very subjective. But even more subjective is energy. And we're going to delve very deep into energy, which a lot of schools don't do. So we all look at each other like, energy? What the hell is energy? I had no idea what they're talking about. So that was my first day at school. We went in and met our academic teachers, and then at the end of the day, the 2 naked people gave each other a massage in front of us while we watched. But we had to be naked again to watch. And it was interesting. And I'm glad I had such a kind of I had extremely open-minded school and extremely open-minded teachers. And they weren't afraid to say, you know what, 10 years ago, part of massage therapy, before they changed the law, we had to teach you how to give a happy ending and all this kind of stuff. So they were very honest. That there's this whole other aspect of massage that we weren't going to, that was out there that we weren't necessarily going to learn to pass our test. But it was up to us to discover. And I went out shortly before school started and then right after school started, and I booked private massage therapists to give me different kinds of massages and to see what was out there. And if anybody knows about massage therapy, for example, or body work, there's thousands of modalities, both touch modalities, energy modalities, hydrotherapy modalities, sounds, um, colors, smells, peloids, all kinds of stuff. And you can spend your whole life studying different modalities. And I didn't know what my calling was, but I learned quickly about, I think it was day 3, they had mentioned, they had somebody come in and they said, well, this is a guest speaker, and they said, in many foreign countries, massage therapists are blind. They teach the blind to do massage therapy so they can have a job and make a living. And they're much more sensitive with their touch and in tune with the body. So that really just, this gong went off my head and said, that will be me. Not that I was going to be blind, but the next time I did a massage, I closed my eyes. And I learned throughout the entire school, every time we did touch, after I saw it or we discussed it, whenever somebody got down in front of me, male, female, didn't matter what it was, I closed my eyes. And suddenly, the paranormal that I already had in me, my intuition, and my empathy started to expand. And I could start feeling the body talking to me. And this is long before we started talking about energy. But I was actually feeling energy. And I would just let the body talk to me. And regardless of what people said, because you always have to do like an intake, like, are you allergic to this, blah, blah, blah. You ask all these medical questions, personal questions, and everything else. After all that was done, people might have had an idea of what they wanted in a massage, but sometimes the body would say something completely different. And I had to learn to go with the body instead of people's ego, because people's ego wasn't going to solve the issue they came for, regardless of what that issue was, even if they weren't aware of what the issue was. So it started this rapid expansion in my mind and in my work, that you listen to your intuition, you feel the energy, you use your empathy all together in one thing, and then you use your touch to listen to the body. And the only way to do that is to shut up. And this is where I first learned to, pardon my French, shut the fuck up and just listen. Because if your mind's talking, and mine, I've got lots of different voices going on in my head, it's distracting. But I learned quite quickly that if I got into what I call the zone, everything, all my voices got quiet in my head. Everything just shut up. And it wasn't about me, and I wasn't thinking, and I could just tune in. And students were picking up on this rather quickly. So I became really popular. By the end of school, everybody wanted to try massage with me because I was able to shut up and just make it all about them, and listen to their body, and listen to their issues, and listen to their history. And before that occurred, though, there was one other thing that I had to learn, which I wasn't aware of, which is kind of another thing that you can call paranormal, you can call it physiological, you can call it whatever you want. They told us in massage school on the first day, you're going to be touched by your fellow students, and they are learning, and don't be defensive. And if you're the one laying on the table, you need to be as descriptive as possible and give as much detailed feedback on how their touch is, how you experienced it, etc., etc. Now, this is where I became momentarily the alien in the class, the one with green skin that everyone was scared of, that wanted to avoid me. Because when I would discuss my classmates' massage, one of the things I would say without even realizing it sounded crazy was I would tell them how their touch smelt. And it became me saying your smell was either, it was a one-note smell, it was a two-note smell, or it was a three-note smell. And if it was more than one, there was a dominant, a secondary, and a tertiary smell in a particular order. Now, didn't mean anything to me. I just smelled people's touch and their energy. I smelled energy and touch. Now, when I would tell them after, oh, you did this, I liked, this is what your touch smelled like, blah, 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 blah. I was just saying it matter-of-factly, not even realizing that it even sounded crazy. And students started to avoid me and look at me weird, and I got that vibe real quick. And I went to the teacher, I'm like, why does everybody having a problem with my feedback, and why does nobody want to get near me? I realize I have psoriasis, but it's not that bad. What's going on? So the teacher said, well, let's find out. So she called a meeting and she said, okay, Michael feels this way. I've noticed it now because he mentioned it several days ago, so I've watched. So what is it that's freaking you out about Michael and his feedback? And the class was kind of hesitant first. She goes, just say it. It's important because you're making him feel bad and he doesn't deserve it. So they told her, they wouldn't tell me, they told her out loud in the class that, well, he's kind of weird because every time we touch him, he tells us how our touch smells. And what is that all about? I mean, who talks about that? So my teacher said, well, okay, let's have a break. And when we come back, I'm going to teach you something I was going to teach you in about 2 months, but we're going to talk about it right now. So we came back from break, and she had some books and charts up, and she said, there's this thing called synesthesia. And synesthesia is when different parts of your brain connect that are not normally connected. So, and it's sensory. So, for example, some people taste colors, or smell numbers, or there's many different kinds of synesthesia. So she showed us this chart, the official chart of synesthesia. And then she said, Michael has one of those rare synesthesias where he smells touch and energy. So she said, let's put it to the test. So she did. She blindfolded me, put me down on the table, and different people took turns touching me. And without me knowing who it was, and I would just tell them what their touch smelled like. Now, some people's touch is mutable, and others were very consistent. I mean, very, very, very consistent. So, for example, we had this pregnant girl in class, and she was very angry and very negative, and just, I mean, I felt sorry for the baby inside her because it must have been a living hell. She was just really hostile. And every time that she touched me, she smelled like turpentine and French fries. So she had like this little maternal French fry thing on, but her first smell, the most dominant smell, the one that just hits you in the face, was turpentine. Um, and she didn't like it when I told her that. And when she touched me, I didn't know. I said turpentine and French fries, and she pulled her hand back, and she's like, "How come he always says that?" So, and I don't know why. It didn't mean anything to me personally, um, but sometimes these smells mean something to other people. So there was this girl from Barbados that was in my class, and she would put her hand on me, and every time she put her hand on me, it was one smell. It was very strong, it was very distinct, and it was wet sand at the beach, which smells slightly different than dry sand at the beach. Now, she claimed every time she touched me, she claimed she had no idea why I kept smelling wet sand at the beach. And I just said, that's just your smell, and there's no other smell. Um, but but something kept telling me it has meaning for her. It had no meaning for me, but something significant because she protested too much every time. And come to find out, almost 3 months into our school, um, we were having a session and she was touching me. And I said, wet sand at the beach. And she lost it. She absolutely fucking lost it in front of the whole class. And in front of some people that were observing also. And she broke down on the floor, fetal position, crying, screaming, carrying on. And we were being taught at that time about emotional release, and that it's common for clients to have emotional, or people to have emotional release during massage sometimes, and that not to freak out, not to stop them, not to say, oh, please don't cry, not to pat their back and say it's going to be okay, but just to be present. To be comforting and present, mostly silently. You can put your hand on them if it's appropriate, and if you don't feel it's appropriate, just be in their energy vicinity. So we all gathered around her energy vicinity as she writhed around on the floor and cried and screamed for about 15 minutes. And then she finally started to pull herself together, and the teacher helped her up and put her down in a seat and said, please share with us um, what happened or what's going on. So she went on to tell this story about several years ago. She and her best friend went to the beach, and her best friend had a child. And she had insisted on going to Miami Beach and drag along her best friend and the child. And they were going to go hang out at this hotel pool for the day and just enjoy themselves. And it was some holiday weekend. So they went, and at some point, they allowed this child to go onto the beach. And soon enough, they saw a crowd gathering and lifeguards and all this kind of stuff. And they looked for the child and realized the child was, still not there. So the mother and her, got this basically brainwave run to the accident. And the child had drowned in the ocean. And they had pulled the child up onto the beach, but it was still the wet sand part of the beach. And she grabbed the child and she held on to it, and she started wailing and screaming because she felt so guilty that it was her idea that this child went to the beach and she caused this child's death. And she said she remembers hugging the child and her nose going into the wet sand, and she was breathing, but she said, I totally remembered that smell. And she goes, I've been trying to block it, but finally, after probably 60 times of me telling her the same thing, I broke the dam, and she let it out. And then after she told us the story, she broke down again, and we were all there for her, and she finally worked through it, and came to realize that this wasn't her. It wasn't her intention. It was, whatever you call it, God's plan, the divine plan. It just happened to happen that she didn't kill this child, and she needed to get over this guilt because A, it wasn't her child, and B, she didn't kill it. So um, it ended up happening that when this got out, suddenly all these other classes wanted to touch me to get their smell. And it was something that Spirit told me to offer for free to everyone. I would never charge for it, and I never have. And people have done it at psychic events and at school and just personal people and any kind of place I've been. It's something I offer for free. Now this is something I never knew, so mind expansion. This meant something to people, and when I've told them their smells, many people have had this huge revelation of remembering their childhood or a dead relative. For example, another psychic that I did this with, I said, I smell malt balls, the smell of malt balls. And sure enough, her father and her, that was like their favorite snack. And she was very close to her father, so those malt balls really meant something to her. And I had no way of knowing that because she never told me. And then I wondered to myself, well, where did I get this huge catalog of smells? And I went to my best friend and I said, do you have any idea where I've got this huge catalog of smells? Have I ever done anything strange? He said, well, I hate to tell you. We never discussed this before, but you do smell everything you touch. It's weird. He goes, at first I didn't know what to make out of it. He goes, for years. And he goes, then I just ignored it, thinking it was one of your little weird quirks because you are, batshit crazy. But he said, now I understand why you smell everything, because you have this huge catalog of smells. You literally, whatever you pick up, you smell, and it registers in your brain somewhere, so that when people touch you, you can get very, very, very specific of exactly what that smell is. So, I mean, it's been everything from dryer lint to like turpentine, French fries, oranges, blood, wet sand at the beach, you name it. I have a catalog in my brain for smelling it, and at some point I've talked to people about their smells. So we'll leave it at that. Just getting into massage therapy, just learning a whole new thing about synesthesia, which added a whole nother dimension to my work and my paranormal. And we'll hit you on the flip side. And again, sorry for the long video. Have a good one.